Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Ray. I'm a detransition male, and today I'm going to be talking about this Reddit thread in the M to F subreddit called "How many of you were the token last good guy before you transitioned?" And I think this thread is really interesting because I kind of gets at what's going on with I think a lot of trans women, particularly the trans women who are of the autogynephilic type. Because just remember, there's two general types of trans women. They are the trans for the first type, the classic transsexual. They're exclusively attracted to men, known from a young age, gender nonconforming from a young age, and generally transition at a young age. The second type is either asexual, bisexual, or exclusively attracted to women. They usually were not as gender nonconforming from a young age, and they didn't know from a young age. And furthermore, there's often an element of sexuality that comes in terms of like how they first, develop their gender dysphoria. There's some element of, cross-dressing arousal, what's called euphoria boners in the trans community. So they, explore their femininity and they get a euphoria boner. And this, is a critical part of their exploration of their gender identity. They typically, have questions like, am I trans or is it just a kink? I've talked about this on my channel before. So in this video, I'm talking about the second type, which, let's just say for the sake of definitions, we'll call them the AGP type. And, I'm going to, sort of bracket the question of whether that's like, the full explanation of what's going on. But let's just assume that that is like a general characteristic. These are the non-classical transsexuals. And I want to talk about how, this process of egg cracking, for those that don't know, an egg is a trans woman who does not yet know that she is a trans woman. And I want to talk about the connection between internalized misandry, being an egg, and AGP, because I think these are all related. Because in this thread, okay, so this trans woman is talking about how, like, before I transitioned, I always found myself invited into women only spaces by my friends. I was always seen as the last good guy in friend groups where the men tended to be a bit misogynistic. The men could be jerks. The women like to have girls only nights. I became a part of that. These experiences were validated because women included me as a girl when I was still presenting male. Okay, so I got included in women only spaces before transitioning because I was seen as different from other men. So the commenters sort of very much resonate with this experience. So a lot of these trans women are dating women because that is this type. Like, they are the type that are attracted to women. The only male that she could trust. Partner had trauma with men. The joke used to be, men are terrible, oh, except you. And I think this comment right here is like so telling, because we have this idea in our society that has been, popularized by such hashtags that on social media, like hashtag men are trash, men are terrible, like cis het straight men are, are like the worst thing you could possibly be. They're almost, they're all misogynist, they're all terrible. Men are trash. And this idea, that men are trash is so, I actually do think it is influential in the development of the trans identity for the AGP type of transsexual. Because what's going on here is that, let's say, you have fully believed this thing that men are terrible, men are terrible, men are terrible. You've internalized this, in good leftist woke circles. It's just repeated endlessly that men are terrible, men are trash, men are, the cause of all the problems in society. They hold the most privilege, they hold the most power. Men are terrible, men are trash. You hear this repeated, and if you are in these circles long enough, you just sort of like internalize this. Men are privileged. They're supposed to listen. They're supposed to shut up. They're privileged. They're terrible. They're the cause of all the problems in society. They're violent. They're just like they're misogynist. And so now you're believing this idea about men, that all men are terrible. And then you're getting these sort of messages from your girlfriend, your partners, your friend group, whatever, that, oh, you're different. Well, okay, so if men are terrible and I'm not terrible, then I must be a woman. And I know that sounds like crazy, that logic, and maybe that is not an explicit conscious, process of logical deduction that is consciously happening, but I am pretty positive that that sort of concept plays a unconscious influential role in the development of the trans identity, because I think the concept of a trans woman is very seductive, because you know why can you not just be a gender nonconforming male? Well, it's because like 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 these people don't want to associate with being male. They don't want to be men because you know they have internalized these messages from society that men are terrible. And well, I'm not terrible. I'm not like those men. I'm not a misogynist. I'm different. I'm different. Yeah, so I had a girlfriend when I was younger that said I was the only exception to her being a lesbian. So this is a very common experience. Like, I even relate to this in my own experiences with women. um I had friends who would say, "You're not really a guy. You're blah blah blah." Took me years to figure it out. I used to be the, but not you. We like you. Um, there are plenty of stories out there. Trans women who, before realizing they were trans, had their partner say, "I felt like I was dating a girl, but you were a guy." Well, what does feel like dating a girl means? It's just like, they're sensitive, they're empathetic, they're empathic, they sort of and a lot of AGPs are very empathic and sensitive relative to your typical non-AGP male, because they have this internalization of the inversion. I mean, like, they sort of like love the idea of themselves as a woman, partly because they love women so much. Like in my experience, AGPs are, they are kind of like big simps. Basically, they love women, and they're very empathic, and they very much relate to women. That's why they want to be women. That's why the feminine identity develops, in part because they hate being men and they really want to be women, because they worship women. They sort of put women on a pedestal, and they sort of, and this fuels the sort of idea, that yeah, here we go. Everyone was always like, men are trash, but you don't count, you're not one of them. And I'd smile and be like, nope, I'm not like other men, so don't group me with them. And this thought process is so common, and it fuels the sort of erasure of gender nonconforming males, because, like, let's say you want to wear women's clothing, let's say you even want to, like, go on hormones, or you want to feminize yourself, or you want to do all these things. You want to sort of like embrace your feminine side as a male. Well, like, if you believe the idea that men are trash and the only way to be sensitive is to be a woman, but you see how this like contributes to the stereotype that men are trash. Because if you say, like, men are trash, but I don't count because I'm not trash. So, well, if all men are trash, then I must not be a man. I must be a woman. Well, why can't we work on like the idea that, like, some men are not trash? Like, this idea that like men are trash, like it is so toxic, and I think it is contributing to the development and the seduction of the trans identity. The trans identity becomes very seductive for these AGPs because it is an escape mechanism. You sort of get to escape the imposition of male privilege. You get to escape the imposition of all these people out there in society saying that men are trash, men are trash, men are terrible. Well, so like, oh, well, I'm sensitive, I'm introspective, I'm empathic. Like, I'm not like these toxic men. I'm not like the toxic bros. I'm sensitive. And like, and so therefore I must be a woman, I must be female. I mean, now, I'm not saying there's like a direct, like one to one correlation between, these sorts of thoughts, but I just think it is part of the overall milieu such that if you have AGP, if you are AGP, if you are one of these, sensitive males, then, the internalization of the message that, men are trash, I think it fuels the adoption of the trans identity. Yeah, okay. So not in the sense of, oh wait, not in the sense of being invited to all the girl stuff, but I put a ton of effort into trying to engage guys to be more feminist. And when I came out, part of me was like, fuck, now this guy just doesn't have a guy in his life who talks to him about this stuff. 100%. I kind of fucked with the heads of my friends because the girls were using me as the standard they held their partners to. Um, it's this nice guy syndrome. So that is the key thing. Like a lot of these AGPs, like they're classic nice guys. Like, but they're the the sort of like nice guy, like simping for women, worshiping women, like hating being a man, like thinking men are terrible. This fuels the creation of the trans identity, and like, uh, and this kind of goes to show that like there's something about the combination of AGP and internalized misandry and just sort of this nice guy syndrome that fosters the development of a trans identity when you know it could very well be the case that you could just be a gender non-conforming male. You can be a male, you can be a man who doesn't like fall into all these stereotypes. And I know some people say like, well, it's more than that. It's about the body. I hate my body too. Well, learning to love the male body, learning to love your body, I think like that has to be in some respects influenced by these messages we're hearing from society because and I know it's more complicated than that because I do know with AGP there is like anatomical AGP such that you are really focused on like your anatomy and this is what drives the desire for bottom surgery, etc. But there are plenty of AGPs out there who don't necessarily want bottom surgery. They don't have that strong of dislike of their body, but they're maybe, more into like the clothing aspect or the behavioral aspect, or, they want to maybe feminize themselves. And, what I'm trying to suggest is that the adoption of the identity of woman as a result of saying, well, men are terrible and I'm not terrible because all these women in my life are saying I'm not terrible. So therefore I must be a woman. I don't, I think that is part of the seduction of the trans identity. And this is why if you're AGP getting exposure to these online social media groups, it is very like influential and powerful and seductive because it sort of gives you a logical like it supplies the logic for saying like I'm not just a gender nonconforming male. I'm not just a gender nonconforming man. I am actually a full blown woman. And so, and the logic is just like, oh, I'm a nice guy, so therefore I must be a woman because there are no nice guys, and like all men are jerks, all men are terrible, men are trash. Um, so Yeah, I just see this like very common. And this is like a pattern that I've seen, and it was definitely part of like my own experience because I just sort of knew that like if I took on the identity of a woman, then I would get praised for that. And I don't think I ever fully made peace with being a man, with being a male. I mean, I think part of this like story about men being trash and men being terrible, it is fueling the sort of like phenomenon here. And I'm not saying it's the only factor. I just think it's part of the story. And I think it still has to do with the underlying, disposition of AGP. I think that is a sort of innate thing. I don't think it's necessarily all social or all environmental, but I do think these messages from society about men being terrible and men being trash, that plays into the way in which AGP developed. And I don't think the adoption of the woman identity is a necessary entailment of having this AGP disposition. If we lived in a different society that wasn't so misandric, that didn't, paint, like teach this message, preach this message in all woke circles and all liberal circles about men being trash, men being terrible, then I think there would be a lot more people who could realize that yes, you can be a gender nonconforming male and you don't have to take on this identity of a woman. You can just sort of be a gender nonconforming male who likes to dress up in women's clothing or whatever. And you can, as long as you like are fully consenting and capable of giving like informed consent, like I'm not even opposed to like hormone therapy if that helps, like or surgery or whatever. I don't know, it's a free country. I think adults can, choose to, modify their bodies however they want. It's kind of like, in my opinion, an elective cosmetic procedure. This is all like elective cosmetics essentially. And I think, adults who are of sound mind have a prerogative, because it's a free country, to do whatever elective procedure they want to modify their bodies. You can, get a crazy tattoo on your head. You can like get whisker implants and turn yourself into a cat. Like it's a free country. You can do what you want, but I think the seduction of the identity part, in terms of like, okay, so you're not just wanting to change your body, you're not just wanting to feminize yourself, but you're wanting to construct this identity as a woman. I think part of what's fueling that is this, you know, this this idea that masculinity is inherently toxic, that men are toxic, males are toxic, and this sort of drives AGPs to just want to reject everything to do with being a man, everything to do with being a male. They just like it's a form of like internalized misandry, I think, because it's like hating everything about yourself that's masculine, hating everything about yourself that's related to being a male, to being a man. It's rejection of these social roles. And I think there's more to it. Like I said, I think there's like internal brain patterns and innate, things going on here that sort of are driving this disposition. But the way that it gets expressed ultimately is influenced by these social messages, these social factors. And like, I just think this thread is a perfect illustration of the way in which, these messages about men are influencing the development of trans identity. And so I think if we want to, sort of like provide more positive messages about, being male, like it is okay to be male. It is okay to be, masculine. And it's okay to be feminine as a male as well. But this idea that like males are toxic, males are bad, males are terrible, if you like believe that enough, if you hear that enough, like of course you're gonna want to transition. Of course you're gonna want to like escape and run away from all this, because this is what we've grown up with, because it's the nice guy syndrome. And like nice guys are tempted to become regular girls. That's the sort of thing, because like but this idea, I think, is very seductive. And it's and the whole gender movement provides a real sort of like seductive ideological framework that allows these types of nice guys to plug into a framework that immediately, plugs them into this like you know, uh, sort of like anti-men movement. So it's like, and this is what, and you will see trans women hating on men, like, oh, like cis men are the worst. Cis men are the worst. Like, I don't want. I would rather be anything but a cis man. Cis het, those cis het men, they're so terrible. They're so terrible. And it's like, I don't know. I can't help but see that these messaging is like influencing, the development of these trans identities. So I know this is kind of controversial. I wasn't really sure how to say this, but I definitely think this is true. It's definitely a factor in like my own transition. So I just wanted to talk about it. So yeah, thanks for watching. Take care. Bye.